Grow Up to Be Like a Child. That's our series. Lends itself to summer and all the things that we're doing and planning, and certainly hope and invite you to be a part of that as well. Had a great week in Vacation Bible School, primarily because of the leadership of Carly Payne. She's been a blessing to us. I want to let you also know her parents, Barry and Claire, are with us today. Would you stand up and let us acknowledge you this morning? The Paynes, for all of us who've been around for a while, are steeped in United Methodism, and Jack and Lily Payne are well remembered and well respected as well. But you raised a wonderful daughter. Thank you so much for lending her to us and being a part of it as well. Again, some of the activities we have this summer, the Adult Vacation Bible School, Texas Rangers game. Last year, we talked about going to the Texas Rangers game. I was hypersensitive because I don't want to make anybody feel that they can't afford to go. So what did we do? We bought $10 tickets. We had a great group, and they were the worst seats I've ever been in. You couldn't see the game. You just watched it on a monitor. They are literally the worst seats. So I want to tell you, we got a little bit better seats. They're a little bit more expensive, but I don't think it's cost prohibitive. If you sign up early enough we can transport you in church vans to eliminate the hassle and the cost of parking. We'd love for you to be a part of that as well. Got some other things this summer. This is the summer of being a child, in particular a child of God. So every week during the sermon series, I'm also going to put up a picture. I got to forewarn you, this is a trigger. All the incredible cuteness of this child just may overwhelm you, but I want to put up a picture of one of our staff members. Anybody want to guess who this is? That's Mark. He's got his mouth open, right? Hadn't stopped talking since. He's in charge of our small groups and a great part of our staff. And every week I want to remind everybody we look at, you were once a child when Jesus talks about children. For to such belongs the kingdom of heaven. Let's bow our heads. God, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight. O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Some of you have been to Italy. A number of years ago when I went, I discovered something I did not know. The tour of the churches and cathedrals kept reappearing on the street side of the cathedral of the church. There'd be a small opening. Sometimes it would be boarded up or bricked over, but you could see the outline of it, and other times it was still there. And it looked like almost a little wheel that was not up and down, but flat, horizontal. And our guide was telling us, it's called a ruota, which means a foundling wheel. And I thought it was fascinating because he was telling us that there was a tradition in ancient Rome, children were just dismissed. If a poor parent could not care for their children, they were just released to the streets to forage for food, to be on their own, unprotected. If there was any mental challenges or physical deformities, they would just release them. And there was a terrible problem in ancient Rome. Kids were being trafficked and used, sold into slavery, all the things that were happening. So Pope Pius III in 1189 decreed that all churches should put in their cathedrals and their churches this ruota, this foundling wheel. It was for mothers in particular who would come and facing the agonizing decision to give up their child because they could no longer care for them. And they would often come in the middle of the night to remain anonymous, and they would place their child on this outer wheel. And often they would bring ribbons or a piece of clothing or something to identify the child. They would ring the bell, and then the person on the inside would turn the handle, and it would bring the child inside of the church. Went to one church in particular. It had a whole room, hundreds of years ago, where you could still see the ribbons, the pieces of clothing, and the little notes that came in the hopes that they might come back and reclaim their child. Can you imagine what it would be like for a mother to give up their child, the most precious gift they've ever received, the thing they love most in this world? Can you imagine how gut-wrenching, difficult it would be to say, as much as I love this child, I'm going to give them up because I think they have a better life in this situation? I stood in court with a woman who decided to relinquish her rights to her child to give to us, trusting that we might raise that child in a better environment that she could provide because of the limited resources she had. So what kind of mother does it? How does a mother do that? I mean, how do you hand your child over? But the early church began to have this reputation that If there was a child in need, they would take them, no questions asked. And so mothers would give them over, trusting those that are behind the wall that would care for them. So this is the story that you probably read. You heard it. It's Samuel. But it begins with Hannah, because Hannah is the one who is going to pray like she's never prayed before. She is facing the same choice, what to do with this child. She is, as the Bible describes, as barren or empty, which sounds like a cruel term, but it's also more descriptive of her soul and the way she felt. Because in a culture that's defined by children, often you were blessed to have children, and if you couldn't, somehow God or life had cursed you, which is not true. But she could feel the brunt of it. So she got down on her knees and prayed as hard as she could, like she's never prayed before, praying in particular for a son and making a deal with God. God, if you will grant me a son, I promise I'll give him back to you, which is what she will do. So once her son is born, his name's Samuel, she does exactly what she promised to do, goes to Shiloh, to where the temple is, and the old priest Eli, and hands over her son. And he is taken in to be raised as a priest by the older priest Eli. Now, how does she do that? I mean, at some point, how do you give your child over to God or in the care of someone else who you believe has the resources, can do what you cannot do in this world? Because I think Hannah understands what a lot of us already forgotten, that everything we have is a gift, that we're stewards of what we've been given, not owners. We have gifts and not possessions. I know that sounds obvious, but that's not the way in which we live. And that was her understanding. My child is a gift. I'm a steward. It's not my possession. And that's a foreign concept to a lot of us, because we're totally convinced in this culture that what we have is ours. We worked for it. We earned it. We deserve it. It's my job, my house, my life, my church, whatever it is, it belongs to me. It's mine. And we keep thinking like it. I control it because I own it and it's mine. The Bible keeps saying, no, you're stewards, not owners. You have gifts, not possessions. I'm an itinerant minister in the United Methodist Church, which means when I was ordained, I agreed to go wherever the bishop sent me. And I look back over all the places I've been in my ministry, and I can't tell you there was a single time when I would have sat down at a table and thought, if I could chart this out, boy, this is exactly where I'd want to go. That never happened. I would get a call, and the bishop or the district superintendent would say, here's where you're going. And you would go. That's what you signed up for. And there's something liberating about it, because I went to places I would have never chosen to go, to be with people I didn't ever think I would ever meet, to have experiences I never imagined that I would have. And I wasn't there to build a career ladder. I was just there to be faithful, and that was the only calling. Is you're not trying to orchestrate or be the architect of your own career. Just be faithful wherever you are, wherever you served in your most imperfect and flawed way. Just be there, present for the people as well. So we are stewards, not owners. There's a great parable that Jesus tells. It's very telling. He talks about this person who owns a vineyard, and he puts other people in charge, but the other people in charge begin to act like they own the place, and they beat up the servants that he sends to sort of give an understanding about what their role was, because now they've assumed, since the owner's never around, it's ours to do what we please. And the owner keeps sending people over and over again, and same thing happens. They get beat up or injured, and finally he says, well, I'll send my son. They'll respect him. Boy, you got to hear this story, because he's talking about his son. And what do? They take him and they kill him. And the problem is, those people who were gifted with being stewards of a vineyard decided, no, that's our vineyard. We'll do with it what we please, and nobody can tell us what to do. I think it's a great reminder. It's not us. This is not our life. There are people who have gone before us. People who come after us. We're stewards just for a little short while. Can't take anything with us. Nothing really belongs to me. And we realize it's not mine. It's not a possession. It's not my money. It's not my life. It's not my children, not my church. It's God's church. We're just stewards of everything that God has entrusted us with. And when we get to the end of our life, that's the real litmus test of how we have lived. How do we share? How generous were we, or did we just hold it on to ourselves? We don't own anything. You don't own the church. Some people think they do, and I'm probably going to make some people mad. But if you push for a vote to decide who owns the church, you've completely missed the point of what God intended for stewards. It's not our church. It's not our children. They belong to God. We get the privilege of taking care of them. At some point in time, every parent realizes that's just not a microcosm of who I am. This is an individual, different, separate. I've been given this incredible privilege to help guide them, to help provide a foundation for them, to carry through the rest of their life, but I don't own them. I can't dictate what I want them to do. They have to choose their own path in life. They're going to have to experience the things that are difficult. They're going to have to overcome challenges, but it's their life. It's not mine to control. They're not possessions. So Samuel is going to learn from Eli the priest. So he's grown up in the temple in Shiloh under the tutelage of Eli, and now he's about 12 years old, which is traditionally in the Jewish culture this age of awakening, literally and figuratively. And you just heard the story that somehow Samuel's lying in bed and he keeps hearing this voice calling his name, and he thinks it's Eli the old priest. And he goes back and asks if Eli's the one that's calling him. Eli says, "No, I didn't call you." He does this 3 times. Finally, after the 3rd time, Eli's finally figuring it out. He's thinking, well, if it's not me, maybe it's God. So go back, lie down again. If you hear your name, respond, speak, for your servant is listening. So you have to know the voice of God. And I don't know how to do this, but all I can tell you is what I've learned, what I've experienced. Because some people will tell you they never hear God's voice. They'll live their entire life, never hear a single word from God directly that would be indisputable. And then I encounter some other people who think they just talk to God every single day about parking spaces, about choices, things to buy, things not to buy, where to live, not to live. They're always talking to God. God's always talking to them, and they're supremely confident. I'm not trying to diminish it. But there are people for both extremes, and there are other people who are sort of wrestling with this idea is, when I hear what I think is God, is that just me speaking and trying to figure it out? Do I live in my own echo chamber? To hear the voice of God is a strange thing. The Bible acknowledges it's not the same for everybody. Everybody has their own context, their own experience. Hear the voice of God is odd. I heard a great interview with Kevin Costner the other day about his role in Field of Dreams. Remember the story? He's an Iowa farmer. He goes out into the cornfields and he hears the voice. Build it, he will come. And he was talking about it, and he said, you know, a lot of people don't know that, but the person they actually chose to do that role was not Kevin Costner, it was Robin Williams. And then they started thinking, well, no, he's exactly the person who would hear voices in a cornfield. We can't have him. They wanted somebody who was the least likely person to hear voices in a cornfield. Children, I think, have an innate sense of ability to hear God. I think they're pure, they're innocent. They come into this world as spiritual beings connected deeply to God. They may not have the language to articulate, but they feel and sense everything so deeply. They have their hearts open, their eyes are open, they sense this wonder and awe and majesty about everything around them, and God is so ever real to them. Problem is they keep listening to us as adults. We keep telling them over and over things that I don't even think we're aware of what we're telling them. We say, just get a good education, get a good job, make a lot of money, listen to your own voice, follow your own dreams. And we try to get them to listen to other things. And I'm not even sure as adults we really know what we actually say to our children. Listen, it took me a long time before I realized my parents put me to bed every night. You know what they said to me? Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray my soul the Lord to take. I thought to myself, wait a second, I'm not going to make it through the night? This is it? And they would smile and sing that song and say good night, and I would go, well, good night. Well, I don't even think we're aware of what we're saying to kids and what that sort of message comes across. So the best advice that Eli catches is the idea that he tells him to listen. Listen to it. So how do you know when it's God's voice? How do you know that it's not your own voice telling you just what you want to hear? Or maybe the voice that says you're right about everything you already believe? Or maybe the confusion, is it God or is it the voice that says, thank God I'm not like those other people? Or maybe it's the voice that says, somebody else is going to tell me about God and what God is saying. And you look to some minister or priest or whatever to tell you what God is saying to you. I don't know, because I think it's hard. I can't speak for everybody. I can speak for myself. I've been in ministry. There was a point in my life when I gave my life to God, clearly. I felt God's presence. And I felt some specific understanding that I was being called into ministry to serve others, to dedicate my life to Christ, to do the things that I hope and pray I was born to do, as imperfect, as flawed as we are. And I said yes to serve, but I will tell you, in all my years of ministry, in all my life, I've never heard a single moment when God spoke to me in utter English with absolute clarity. I've never heard it, but I've never doubted that God calls. And here's what I've learned. If it is God speaking to you, I suspect it's going to feel more like a tug on your heart than a scream from heaven. It's going to be a gentle pushing and prodding. Something that catches you off guard, that holds on to you. I think it'll also surprise you. If it truly comes from God, it's not going to be what you expect. I promise you that. It will change you. And there's a real good chance you're not going to feel up to the task and you're not going to feel worthy of it. All these things are going to reaffirm whether it's your own voice talking, somebody else telling what to do, or the authentic voice of God trying to lead you in a different direction. It's going to make you different. You will be changed because of it. You cannot stay the same and be called by God. And most of the time, you know this, it's going to make your life harder. You're going to have to sacrifice things you didn't know you were going to have to sacrifice, do things you never expected to do, go places you never dreamed of going. And there's going to be obstacles and challenges. God's not going to clear this path and make it easy for you. You're going to be shocked at how many things come up that you're going to have to figure out how to get over, get through, and work around so that you can do what you were called to do. It's never going to be exactly what you think it is, never going to be a straight line to anything. It's going to be a journey. That's the biblical narrative that we all follow. Never point A to point C. It is wandering in the hopes of being obedient and finding God. And the litmus test for a lot of us is you're not going to be able to do what you're called to do if you try to do it on your own. Because if it comes from God, it's not possible unless God is in it. And if God is in it, anything is possible. If God is not in it, you are on your own, and you may or may not be able to do it. And if it truly comes from God, the one thing that all of us who have felt that will tell you, it never lets you go. It doesn't pass. You don't get bored with it, decide to do something else. It just embeds itself in you to the degree that it will not let you go. You cannot outrun it. You can't outfun it. You can't ignore it. You can't walk away from it. It takes hold of you, and you finally figure out your life has to go this direction. You refuse to go in any other direction because you feel that's where God is. I know that's less than satisfying to a lot of it because you want to be sure, you want to be convinced, you want to have absolutely zero doubt that whatever you're hearing comes from God. It's not your own self-talk. It's not somebody else telling you. It comes from God telling you what God wants from you and what to do. I wish I could help you clarify that. I think it depends on the person. I think it depends on the context. I wish I could help you, but I can't. But I do know somebody who can help you, because he offers these words. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all of his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. Or as we might say, when you know, you know.